Okay, tonight is the 10th of September and we're on the second night of the Majjhima Nikāya talks. Now we come to the third sutta in the Majjhima Nikāya, Dhammadayada sutta, as in the Dhamma. Thus have I heard. On one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the monks thus, "Monks, Noble Sir," they replied. The Blessed One said, "Monks, be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things. Out of compassion for you I have thought, how shall my disciples be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things? If you are my heirs in material things, not my heirs in Dhamma, you will be reproached thus. The teacher's disciples live as his heirs in material things, not as heirs in Dhamma, and I will be reproached thus. The teacher's disciples live as his heirs in material things, not as his heirs in Dhamma. If you are my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things, you will not be reproached, as it will be said, the teacher's disciples live as his heirs in Dhamma, not as his heirs in material things. And I will not be reproached, as it will be said, the teacher's disciples live as his heirs in Dhamma, not as his heirs in material things. Therefore, monks, be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things. Out of compassion for you I have thought, how shall my disciples be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things?" Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says that his monk disciples should inherit his Dhamma, not inherit his material possessions like offerings or a comfortable place to sleep, good food, nice robes and all that. So the Buddha wants his monks to inherit all that he has taught them, and not to be attached to the material possessions. Now monks, suppose that I had eaten, refused more food, had my fill, finished, had enough, had what I needed, and some alms food was left over to be thrown away. Then two monks arrived, weak and hungry, and I told them, "Monks, I have eaten, refused more food, had my fill, finished, had enough, had what I needed, and there is this alms food of mine left over to be thrown away. Eat if you like. If you do not eat, then I shall throw it away where there is no greenery, or drop it into water where there is no life." Let's stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, if you don't want to eat this food, I will throw it away where there is no plants, or into water if there is no living beings in there. Why? Because plants are supposed to be the abodes of fairies. Fairies are supposed to live in plants. So if you throw food on the plants, it's like dirtying their house. Put oil and all that into their house so they get annoyed. And if you drop it into water where there is fishes and all that, maybe either you would place a small puddle of water and then the fishes and all that may die if it's contaminated. Or if the water is like flowing water, people use it downstream, then you throw the food into the water, then you contaminate the water because people drink the water. Then one monk thought, the Blessed One has eaten, had what he needed, but there is this alms food of the Blessed One left over to be thrown away. If he do not eat it, the Blessed One will throw it away. But this has been said by the Blessed One, "Monks, be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things." Now this alms food is one of the material things. Suppose that instead of eating this alms food, I pass the night and day hungry and weak. And instead of eating that alms food, he passed that night and day hungry and weak. Then the second monk thought, the Blessed One has eaten, had what he needed, but there is this alms food of the Blessed One left over to be thrown away. Suppose that I eat this alms food and pass the night and day, neither hungry nor weak. And after eating that alms food, he passed the night and day, neither hungry nor weak. Now, although that monk, by eating that alms food, passed the night and day, neither hungry nor weak, yet the first monk is more to be respected and commended by me. Why is that? Because that will for long conduce to his fewness of wishes, contentment, effacement, easy support, and arousal of energy. Therefore, monks, be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things. Out of compassion for you, I have thought, how shall my disciples be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things? Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, suppose he has finished eating and there's some food left over, and two monks came and they heard this teaching of the Buddha, that the Buddha told them to inherit his Dhamma, not to inherit his material things. So the first monk was more scrupulous. He thought about what the Buddha said. Then he said, I should not take this leftover food because that is material things. If I take it, there's inheriting material things from the Buddha. So he refused to eat it for that day. So because he didn't have any food for that day, he was hungry and weak the whole day and night. But the second monk thought, if I don't eat this food, it's going to be thrown away. So I might as well eat it. So he ate it. But the Buddha said he praises the first monk more. Why? Because actually it shows that monk is more serious, more sincere. But then actually it's not necessary for him to do that. But the Buddha says because of his sincerity that the Buddha praises him more. That is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Sublime One rose from his seat and went into his dwelling. Soon after he had left, the Venerable Sariputta addressed the monks thus. Friends, monks. Friend, they replied. The Venerable Sariputta said this. Friends, in what way do disciples of the teacher who lives secluded not train in seclusion? And in what way do disciples of the teacher who lives secluded train in seclusion? And they said, indeed, friend, we would come from far away to learn from the Venerable Sariputta the meaning of this statement. It would be good if the Venerable Sariputta would explain the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monks will remember. And then, friends, listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, friend, the monks replied. The Venerable Sariputta said, Friends, in what way do disciples of the teacher who live secluded not train in seclusion? Here, disciples of the teacher who live secluded do not train in seclusion. They do not abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon. They are luxurious and careless, leaders in backsliding, neglectful of seclusion. In this, the elder monks are to be blamed for three reasons. As disciples of the teacher who live secluded, they do not train in seclusion. They are to be blamed for this first reason. They do not abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon. They are to be blamed for this second reason. They are luxurious and careless, leaders in backsliding, neglectful of seclusion. They are to be blamed for this third reason. The elder monks are to be blamed for these three reasons. In this, the middling monks are to be blamed for three reasons. Stop here for a moment. This elder monks refers to the Theras. Theras are monks who have taken the higher ordination for 10 years or more. Thera, sometimes also called Thero. And then the middling monks are those what they are called Majjhima Bhikkhu. Majjhima Bhikkhu are those who have not completed 10 years of monkhood, but they have completed 5 years. So those who have completed 5 years or 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years are considered middling monks, Majjhima. As disciples of the teacher who lives secluded, they do not train in seclusion. They are to be blamed for this first reason. They do not abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon. They are to be blamed for this second reason. They are luxurious and careless, leaders in backsliding, neglectful of seclusion. They are to be blamed for this third reason. The middling monks are to be blamed for these three reasons. In this, the new monks are to be blamed for three reasons. Stop here for a moment. New monks are called Navaka Bhikkhu. New monks refers to monks who have not completed 5 years of monkhood. Those who don't have any vasa, those who have 1, 2, 3 or 4 vasas are called Navaka Bhikkhu, new monks. As disciples of the teacher who lives secluded, they do not train in seclusion. They are to be blamed for this first reason. They do not abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon. They are to be blamed for this second reason. They are luxurious and careless, leaders in backsliding, neglectful of seclusion. They are to be blamed for this third reason. The new monks are to be blamed for these 3 reasons. It is in this way that disciples of the teacher who live secluded do not train in seclusion. Stop here for a moment. We can see from the earliest discourses of the Buddha, the suttas and the Vinaya books, that the Buddha and his disciples spend most of their time in forest monasteries, in secluded places. But nowadays, the tendency is for a lot of monks to live in towns. So if they live in towns, then they are not practicing according to here what the Buddha tells them to practice. They are not secluded. They do not train in seclusion. And then they are luxurious, because normally if you stay in the town monastery, there's so much offerings, you have a very luxurious lifestyle. In what way, friends, do disciples of the teacher who live secluded train in seclusion? Here, disciples of the teacher who live secluded train in seclusion. They abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon. They are not luxurious and careless. They are keen to avoid backsliding and are leaders in seclusion. In this, the elder monks are to be commended for 3 reasons. As disciples of the teacher who live secluded, they train in seclusion. They are to be commended for this first reason. They abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon. They are to be commended for this second reason. They are not luxurious and careless. They are keen to avoid backsliding and are leaders in seclusion. They are to be commended for this third reason. The elder monks are to be commended for these 3 reasons. In this, the middling monks are to be commended for 3 reasons. As disciples of the teacher who lives secluded, they train in seclusion. They are to be commended for this first reason. They abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon. They are to be commended for this second reason. They are not luxurious and careless. They are keen to avoid backsliding and are leaders in seclusion. They are to be commended for this third reason. The middling monks are to be commended for these 3 reasons. In this, the new monks are to be commended for 3 reasons. As disciples of the teacher who live secluded, they train in seclusion. They are to be commended for this first reason. They abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon. They are to be commended for this second reason. They are not luxurious and careless. They are keen to avoid backsliding and are leaders in seclusion. They are to be commended for this third reason. The new monks are to be commended for these 3 reasons. It is in this way that disciples of the teacher who live secluded train in seclusion. Stop here for a moment. If you compare this with some of the Mahayana books, you find the teachings there are quite opposite. There are certain suttas where they say that if you go and live in the forest alone, you are not practicing correctly, that you have to be among society, among a lot of people and all that. And only if you are able to withstand all the defilements, then that's a real macho, real hero. But that's not what the Buddha teaches. In the Bodhisattva precepts, there is a minor precept against living alone in the forest. Staying alone and practicing like this. So all these teachings just go contradictory to what the Buddha says. Venerable Sariputta replied, continued, friends, the evil herein is greed and hatred. There is a middle way for the abandoning of greed and hatred, giving vision, giving knowledge, which leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. And what is that middle way? It is just this noble eightfold path, that is right view, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right recollection and right concentration. This is the middle way, giving vision, giving knowledge, which leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. The evil herein is anger and revenge, contempt and a domineering attitude, envy and avarice, deceit and fraud, obstinacy and presumption, conceit and arrogance, vanity and negligence. There is a middle way for the abandoning of vanity and negligence, giving vision, giving knowledge, which leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. And what is that middle way? It is just this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right recollection, and right concentration. This is the middle way, giving vision, giving knowledge, which leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. That is what the Venerable Sariputta said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Venerable Sariputta's words. So you see, after the Buddha had spoken and told the monks to be heirs of the Dhamma, not heirs of material things, the Buddha probably foresaw that in the future that like nowadays monasteries will be very luxurious town monasteries. Monks will drive big cars and own property and all that. So that's why the Buddha gave this advice that we should inherit his Dhamma. If we inherit his Dhamma, then we will practice like the Buddha. The Buddha gave up all worldly things to practice a life of austerity. And nowadays some monks do the opposite. From a poor life, they wear the robes and become a rich monk. So the Buddha has given this warning, and Venerable Sariputta has expanded on it. Venerable Sariputta is the Buddha says, he turns the Dhamma wheel just like the Tathagata, just like the Buddha. So Venerable Sariputta says that the monks, if they don't practice, do not train in seclusion, then they are blamable. If they do not abandon what the teacher tells them to abandon, what is not good for them should be abandoned, then also they are blamable. And then if they are luxurious, again it mentions neglectful of seclusion. That means they don't go to quiet, secluded places. They like to live in towns and cities where they get big fat offerings. So, luxurious lifestyle is blamable. And then after that he talks about these defilements of greed and hatred, anger, revenge, contempt, domineering attitude, envy, avarice, deceit, fraud, obstinacy, presumption, conceit, arrogance, vanity, and negligence. And the Buddha says to abandon of that, you have to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, the next sutta is the fourth sutta, Bhayabherava sutta, fear and dread. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Natha Pindika's park. Then the Brahmin Janusoni went to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said, Master Gotama, when clansmen have gone forth from the home life into homelessness out of faith in Master Gotama, do they have Master Gotama as their leader, their helper, their guide? And do these people follow the example of Master Gotama? And the Buddha said, that is so, Brahmin, that is so. When clansmen have gone forth from the home life into homelessness out of faith in me, they have me for their leader, their helper, and their guide. And these people follow my example. But Master Gotama, remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. Seclusion is hard to practice, and it is hard to enjoy solitude. One would think the jungles must rob a monk of his mind if he has no concentration. Stop here for a moment. So here, Janusoni is asking the Buddha whether his disciples follow the Buddha's example, and the Buddha says yes. And then he says that remote jungle places, forests, secluded places, staying there is very difficult. If a monk has no concentration, he might go mad or so. This shows that the Buddha and his Arahant disciples spend most of their time in the forest, secluded, away from people. In the Vinaya books, the Buddha said that before he was enlightened, he used to live like a forest deer. Forest deer, they always go away from people. If they see a human being, they run away. So the Buddha said he used to be like that. He lived in the deep forest. He see any human being come, quickly he run away. And then he sleep in the, sometimes, in what they call charnel ground, where they throw the corpse. In India, they used to throw the corpse in the jungle for the animals to eat. So he'll go and rest there. He'll collect all the bones, use as his pillow. So he was so secluded. So his disciples also practice a bit like that. And the Buddha said, that is so, Brahmin, that is so. Remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. Seclusion is hard to practice, and it is hard to enjoy solitude. One would think the jungles must rob a monk of his mind if he has no concentration. Before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, I too considered thus. Remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. The jungles must rob a monk of his mind if he has no concentration. I considered thus, whenever recluses or Brahmins, unpurified in bodily conduct, resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest, then owing to the defect of their unpurified bodily conduct, these good recluses and Brahmins evoke unwholesome fear and dread. But I do not resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest, unpurified in bodily conduct. I am purified in bodily conduct. I resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest as one of the noble ones with bodily conduct purified. Seeing in myself this purity of bodily conduct, I found great solace in dwelling in the forest. I considered thus, whenever recluses or Brahmins, unpurified in verbal conduct, unpurified in mental conduct, unpurified in livelihood, resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest, they evoke unwholesome fear and dread. But I am purified in verbal conduct, in mental conduct, in livelihood. I resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest as one of the noble ones, with conduct and livelihood purified. Seeing in myself this purity of conduct and livelihood, I found great solace in dwelling in the forest. I considered thus, whenever recluses or Brahmins who are covetous and full of lust, but I am uncovetous. Whenever recluses or Brahmins who, with a mind of ill will and intentions of hate, dwell in the forest, but I have a mind of loving kindness. Whenever recluses or Brahmins are overcome by sloth and torpor, but I am without sloth and torpor. Overcome with restlessness and unpeaceful mind, I have a peaceful mind. Uncertain and doubting, I have gone beyond doubt. And given to self-praise and disparagement of others, I am not given to self-praise and disparagement of others. Subject to alarm and terror, I am free from trepidation. Desirous of gains, honors, and renown, I have few wishes. Lazy and wanting in energy, I am energetic. Unmindful and not fully aware, I am established in mindfulness. Unconcentrated and with straying minds, I am possessed of concentration. I considered thus, whenever recluses or Brahmins devoid of wisdom, frivolous, resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest, then owing to the defect of their being devoid of wisdom and frivolous, these good recluses and Brahmins evoke unwholesome fear and dread. But I do not resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest, devoid of wisdom, a driveler. I am possessed of wisdom. I resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest as one of the noble ones possessed of wisdom. Seeing in myself this possession of wisdom, I found great solace in dwelling in the forest. I'll stop here for a moment. So, the Buddha says that if somebody is impure in body conduct or verbal or mental conduct, and has a lot of defilements, covetous and anger and hatred and sloth and torpor and restlessness and doubt and all that. If they go and stay in such places, they will become frightened. This fright is not due to anything outside. It's due to the defilements inside. Years ago, when I was in Thailand, I also practiced a bit like this. And we went to stay near the Burmese border, a few of monks from Wat Pananachat. And we agreed that we'll live far away from each other, don't see each other. So far, even if anything happened to you, you shout also, nobody will hear. That was done on purpose, so that we have to have this experience. Then in the middle of the night, sometimes because that is border area, it's full of the jungle, forest, sometimes we hear the sound of these animals, and hear the sound of tiger and all that. And then you can have a bit of fear. But when you have this thought that you have come here with a pure intention to practice, and your sila is pure and all this, it gives you a lot of courage. So the sincerity is very important. I consider it thus. There are the specially auspicious nights of the 14th, the 15th and 8th of the fortnight. Now what if on such nights as these, I were to dwell in such awe-inspiring, horrifying abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines and tree shrines? Perhaps I might encounter that fear and dread. And later on such specially auspicious nights as the 14th, the 15th and the 8th of the fortnight, I dwelt in such awe-inspiring, horrifying abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines and tree shrines. And while I dwelt there, a wild animal would come up to me, or a peacock would knock off a branch, or the wind would rustle the leaves. I thought, what now, if this is the fear and dread coming? I thought, why do I dwell always expecting fear and dread? What if I subdue that fear and dread, while keeping the same posture that I am in when it comes to me? While I walked, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither stood nor sat nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I stood, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked nor sat nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I sat, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked nor stood nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I lay down, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked nor stood nor sat down till I had subdued that fear and dread. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says on these Uposatha nights, 8th night, the 15th, the 23rd and the 30th nights of the lunar month, those are auspicious nights. Those are the nights that the four great heavenly kings, the devas, are supposed to observe humans. So, especially in India, these are the nights or the days that they keep the precepts, the 8 precepts. So the Buddha went to fearful places. These are the shrines. These are the places where people pray to the spirits, tree spirits, ground spirits and all that, what we call Datokong. So those places where people pray to spirits, it is expected that there should be a lot of spirits around. So the Buddha, he purposely went to such places to see whether to experience it. And then this fear would come upon him. Now this fear is very natural for everybody to feel fear. As long as you have an ego, as long as you have a self, there's always the fear that somebody may want to kill you or take your life and all that, or harm you. The only person who does not have any fear is the Arahant, the liberated person, the enlightened person. He has no more self, then he has no more fear. Otherwise, everybody else would have some amount of fear. So the Buddha said when fear came, then he just observe. I had this experience once. I stayed in a cave, and every few nights I'd hear this sound like a ghost calling, and I couldn't go anywhere. So the only thing to do was to watch the fear. You see the fear going up to a certain limit, and after that it goes down. If you repeat this several times, then you know that you can only go up to a certain amount and then it come down. So once you get used to it, then it is not so horrible anymore. Whatever is unknown to us, we are frightful. But after you have experienced it a few times, then it becomes something that you know, it's less fearful. There are Brahmins, some recluses and Brahmins who perceive day when it is night, and night when it is day. I say that on their part this is an abiding in delusion, but I perceive night when it is night, and day when it is day. Rightly speaking, were it to be said of anyone, a being not subject to delusion has appeared in the world for the welfare and happiness of many, out of compassion for the world, for the good welfare and happiness of gods and humans. It is of me indeed that, rightly speaking, this should be said. Tireless energy was aroused in me, and unremitting mindfulness was established. My body was tranquil and untroubled, my mind concentrated and unified. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I entered upon and abided in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought directed and sustained, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. With the stilling of thought directed and sustained, I entered upon and abided in the second jhana, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind, without thought directed and sustained, with delight and pleasure born of concentration. With the fading away as well of delight, I abided in equanimity and mindful and fully aware, still feeling pleasure with the body. I entered upon and abided in the third jhana, on account of which the noble ones announce, he has a pleasant abiding, who has equanimity and recollection. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, I entered upon and abided in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and utter purification of recollection, sati, and equanimity. When my concentrated mind was thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to knowledge of the recollection of past lives. I recollected my manifold past lives, that is, 1 birth, 2 births, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 1,000 births, 100,000 births, many aeons of world contraction, many aeons of world expansion, many aeons of world contraction and expansion. There I was so named, of such a clan, with such an appearance, such was my nutriment, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my life term, and passing away from there, I reappeared elsewhere. And there too I was so named, of such a clan, with such an appearance, such was my nutriment, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my life term, and passing away from there, I reappeared here. Thus with their aspects and particulars, I recollected my manifold past lives. This was the first true knowledge attained by me in the first watch of the night. Ignorance was banished and true knowledge arose. Darkness was banished and light arose, as happens in one who abides diligent, ardent and resolute. When my concentrated mind was thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to knowledge of passing away and reappearance of beings. With the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, I saw beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate. I understood how beings pass on according to their actions thus. These worthy beings who were ill-conducted in body, speech and mind, revilers of noble ones, wrong in their views, giving effect to wrong view in their actions, on the dissolution of the body after death, have reappeared in a state of deprivation, in a bad destination, in perdition, even in hell. But these worthy beings who were well conducted in body, speech and mind, not revilers of noble ones, right in their views, giving effect to right view in their actions, on the dissolution of the body after death, have reappeared in a good destination, even in the heavenly world. Thus with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, I saw beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and I understood how beings pass on according to their actions. This was the second true knowledge attained by me in the second watch of the night. Ignorance was banished and true knowledge arose. Darkness was banished, and light arose, as happens in one who abides diligent, ardent, and resolute. When my concentrated mind was thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to the knowledge of the destruction of the asavas. I directly knew as it actually is. This is suffering. I directly knew as it actually is. This is the origin of suffering. I directly knew as it actually is. This is the cessation of suffering. I directly knew as it actually is. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. I directly knew as it actually is. These are the asavas. I directly knew as it actually is. This is the origin of the asavas. I directly knew as it actually is. This is the cessation of the asavas. I directly knew as it actually is. This is the way leading to the cessation of the asavas. Asavas means uncontrolled mental outflows. When I knew and saw thus, my mind was liberated from the asava of sensual desire, from the asava of being, and from the asava of ignorance. When it was liberated, there came the knowledge. It is liberated. I directly knew birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. This is the third true knowledge attained by me in the third watch of the night. Ignorance was banished and true knowledge arose. Darkness was banished and light arose, as happens in one who abides diligent, ardent, and resolute. Now, Brahmin, it might be that you think perhaps the recluse Gautama is not free from lust, hatred, and delusion, even today, which is why he still resorts to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest. But you should not think thus. It is because I see two benefits that I still resort to remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest. I see a pleasant abiding for myself here and now, and I have compassion for future generations. And Janasoni said, indeed, it is because Master Gautama is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, that he has compassion for future generations. Magnificent Master Gautama, magnificent Master Gautama. Master Gautama has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master Gautama for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. From today, let Master Gautama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. That's the end of the sutta. So here you see the Buddha says that he went to stay in the forest and he practiced very hard. His energy was tireless energy was aroused in me. So he refused to sleep. And unremitting mindfulness was established. This one, when people talk about satipatthana, this is the meaning of satipatthana, unremitting mindfulness. That mindfulness that does not stop, that does not run away. That's why I translate this satipatthana as intense state of recollection, intense state of mindfulness, but a specific mindfulness, not general mindfulness. So, you see, like the Buddha at the age of 35, he was enlightened. So he practiced so hard that the whole night he didn't sleep. So, if you want to become enlightened, the chances are better when you are young. Old guys like us, it's harder to practice. How to keep awake the whole night. So, the Buddha said because of his strenuous effort, he attained the 4 jhanas. And after he attained the 4 jhanas, he recollected his past lives. This is very important because in his last life as Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha did not have access to the Dhamma. So he was ignorant of the Dhamma. But when he recollected his past lives, then he realized that a long time ago, he was a monk disciple of the Buddha Kassapa. Then all the Dhamma that he had learned from the Sammasambuddha came back to him. That is why on the third watch of the night, he used his knowledge of the Dhamma, the 4 Noble Truths, contemplated on the 4 Noble Truths and attained enlightenment. It's mentioned here. So without that knowledge of the Four Noble Truths, even he had attained all that psychic power, he could not have become enlightened. It was the knowledge of the Dhamma, that is the Vipassana part. The four jhanas are the Samatha part. You need both. Then only he became enlightened. So at the end, the Buddha says, after enlightenment, the Buddha still always stays in the forest. And the Buddha said, just because I stay in the forest, I don't think I'm not enlightened. The Buddha says, for two good reasons, he continues to stay in the forest, just like Venerable Mahakassapa said. One is pleasant abiding. Pleasant abiding means he's very comfortable being alone. When an ascetic is used to being alone, he likes to be alone, not disturbed by other people. People always like to talk. So that's because a person has attained the jhanas, the mind inclines towards seclusion. It doesn't need anybody to talk to. The mind is giving all that bliss, all that happiness. So when he talks to somebody, he has to get out from that state, you see. That is dukkha. It prefers to abide in the jhana. So that's one reason. The second reason is he has compassion for future generations. He's trying to teach future people like us that the way to enlightenment is to stay in the jungle. Not like the Vimalakirti Bodhisattva going around the karaoke joints and the gambling joints and all that. So that's the end of the sutta. We have covered 45 minutes. I don't know whether we have time for another. I don't think we have time for another sutta. So we stop here.
He was already exposed as Sakadagami, and one was already at Samadhi, already at the right way, but he has this Sakadagami. Then thinking that he is automatically that he can remember that he has to be born again, and he able to remember what we have done in the past of his life. But he has to try so hard in order to get back to the original teaching of some previous Dhammadayada. I mean that the form of it's not an easy thing also.
No. He has forgotten everything. He has to make a lot of effort to recover that Dhamma that he learned before. But then because he has already become an Arya, he goes along that way automatically. He gives up everything to strive. So if a person is not an Arya, he would not likely to put so much effort, give up so much. After they have finished, they are not really practicing hard. This is their natural state to abide in jhana. Every day they abide in jhana because it gives them a lot of happiness. If they come out of the state of jhana, they are in the world of the six consciousness, the six senses. The world of the six senses is a suffering, world of suffering. So they prefer to abide in jhana every day. It's natural for them. They don't have to make any effort. Their mind inclines into that jhana. So they don't want to come and mix with society, because when they come and mix with society, people want to talk to them. Reporters want to interview them. They have to go here, go there, and all that. Then they cannot abide in jhana, which is so blissful.
Now, when fear comes in, what is the best way to control? I mean, at times you can't even observe your fear so frightened, especially staying in the position that there are also noise coming out and that. How to be, is there any way that you can calm?
You have to understand this fear, how it works. When you hear a sound that you have not heard before, or you see something that you have not seen before, because it's unknown to you, the fear arises. You think that it's a threat to your life and all that. And then the fear increases when you start thinking about it. It's called the proliferation of thoughts. You start thinking. So the simple way is when you think any fear is arising, is to do some chanting. Chant Namo Tassa or Arahang, Arahang, Arahang. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Like that, you keep chanting. You put your mind to do something so that it does not start thinking all the unwholesome thoughts. That is one way. Another way is to observe your fear. Fear is a feeling, right? So this feeling or emotion, the fear, it arises, arises. So you watch it rising. Watch it rising up to a certain limit, and then it will stay there for a while. Then later it will slowly come down. So the point is to make your mind do something. So watching your emotion or your fear is also making your mind do some work, so that it doesn't think. So of course the best protection is to have a strong samadhi. If you have strong samadhi, anything happens, the mind doesn't move so easily. Resting on solid foundation. Initially, for everyone, when you start going to live alone, because you are not used to it, you will experience fear, and small things also give you fear. But after years of experience, you learn to ignore it. It's like sometimes, like I stay in my kuti, I hear some sound outside. If I start thinking about it, you start speculating. Is it a robber? Is it a ghost? Is it a tiger? Is it a panther? All this. So after years of experience, I do is I just ignore it. If I want to sleep, I just go to sleep. Because if you think about it, then especially something happened a few months ago. I was in my kuti in the middle of the night, about 2 a.m. I heard a big rock hit my kuti, from the outside. Part the big rock. I thought to myself, what could it be? Could it be a robber? He wants to check whether I'm inside the kuti. Or is it because he's angry with me? Or could it be that somebody using black magic to make the stone fly and hit my kuti and all that? So and later I decide, no point to think about all that. Just ignore is the best. If I go outside, it might be dangerous. So I just continue my sleep, no problem. So the same way, sometimes I stay in a cave. I hear some sound or so, I just ignore it. You have all kinds of experience. Last time I stayed in one cave, in the middle of the night, I have a very nasty smell. Some like a hungry ghost go by, a very smelly smell. It's something unusual. Must be at this hour of the night, 2 a.m. Must be a spirit or something. Of course, if you start thinking about it, you have the fear. You just have the thought, may you be well and happy. You walk your way, I walk my way, don't disturb me. No problem. Okay, shall we transfer it?